I'm Louise Sumner Thomas. We're at the Shady Lawn Nursing Home where I'm visiting my Aunt Mat Sumner. She's my mother's sister, and her name really isn't Aunt Mat, but she'll tell you about that. She's 92 years old, and she's been blessed with a wonderful memory, so she'll have a lot of interesting things to tell us, I'm sure. Aunt Mat, you want to tell us about your childhood?
Tell what kind of house was it?
Yes, that'll be fine.
I was born in my grandmother's house. My great-grandmother, Irene, she was. And she had her whole house was built of logs, huge and chinked. Now, chinking logs usually, that is usually done with red dirt. That kind of
Clay dirt. Was that what it was? Clay dirt. It was chinked with clay dirt.
Yeah, clay dirt.
Uh-huh.
They weren't so soft dirt.
Uh-huh.
And the floors were bare, without all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the parlor had a flowered, old-time flowered coat.
I remember Mama telling about how pretty she thought that parlor was, with the red carpet and the red drapery and so forth. What else do you remember about that?
Well, it had a cloth curtain at the windows. They had gourds in them, and they were pretty too.
What kind of furniture did she have in the parlor? You remember?
Well, she had a bureau with the bureau had a cloth in the glass.
Uh-huh.
And
they had cloth spreads placed on a lot of the furniture in those days, didn't they?
I had all kinds of them for my furniture.
Uh-huh. When I can first remember, people used those things.
Took an awful lot of washing in the spring to go over them.
And starched all those things, didn't they?
And
you want to tell us about some of the first Christmases you can remember?
Well, we didn't have anything expensive for Christmas. Just had plain, old-fashioned evenings.
But you had a lot of it, though, didn't you?
Yeah, that kind of.
You remember what Santa Claus brought you sometime?
Well, sometimes he brought me a doll up until I was 7 years old.
What kind of dolls did he bring?
Well, you just brought a head and a yoke of metal, of china, and then you made down from the shoulder.
Did he bring the hands and legs too?
Huh?
Did the Santa Claus bring the doll hands and feet too?
Yes.
And then your mother made the body.
Made
Put it all together.
Certain kind of material made into the body. And that was one thing I liked to get was a doll.
Mm-hmm. Did y'all have anything to eat at Christmas that you didn't get the rest of the year? Did you get candy and things like that special?
My mother was in bed so many Christmases. But one thing I remember she always had cooked was a big bowl of dried apples.
Mm-hmm.
And we made them in fried pies for Christmas one day.
You all always had a lot of company, didn't you? I remember Mama saying, because you lived in your grandmother's home and all her relatives came.
They all came, all settling around in a half circle around that wide fireplace. And Mother would be in the kitchen cooking for them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fun for
I
her.
was required to help bake the plain cornbread. We even had that high.
A foot high?
That it was high.
Dear.
Ate that with the red gravy.
How did you make plain cornbread?
You first sifted the meal. It had an awful lot of siftings in it. Mm-hmm. And then I baked it. My job was to set the table after I baked all that bread. And the chickens always was allowed to come on the back porch, one back porch. Now the other one was up kind of high off the ground. And they didn't get in. And every now and then, Mother'd get a woman to come and stay a few weeks.
To help her?
Especially if it was a new baby. And one old woman said she didn't leave. She'd keep the chicken there off that porch, and if she went with a broom in her hand. So my job cleaned it up.
Yes. Do you want to go back to the Christmas dinners and tell us what you had for dessert?
Well, we always had...
Or for some of those Sunday dinners, either one, when you had so many relatives there.
I tell about the Christmas dinner.
Okay.
But we always had, what did they call it?
Eggnog?
Eggnog. We always had eggnog.
Wonder what eggnog was made of.
Little whiskey.
And basically what else?
Well, milk.
Like boiled custard?
Boiled custard.
Only it had a little whiskey in it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It just had a small amount.
That's what I thought, just a few drops for a gallon.
Thomases weren't for that.
Uh-huh.
They never did agree on a few things. And Mother had danced a lot when she was young in play parties.
Uh-huh.
And that way we had play parties.
Tell us about a play party.
Well, one of them was Jackie, let me see.
Skip to my love?
Skip to my loo.
Yes.
That was the one. My darling.
Uh-huh. Yes. How did you know how to play, what to do in those play party games?
Well, it had been handed down from time to time. And one was Rosie Line. You formed in two rows, the boys on one side and the girls on the other. And you turned around to shake hands.
Uh-huh.
Kept right smart at turning.
And were you singing the directions all that time?
Yeah.
Or was somebody calling it?
Just Cadiz.
And singing the words?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, I saw one of the ladies.
Yes?
And it had boys wore ties about an inch.
Uh-huh.
You know, from the other people wearing so wide.
Uh-huh.
They wore the ties just about an inch wide. And they had the prettiest dresses and the prettiest shoes. And oh, that was pretty. They were from Marion, Kentucky.
Well, that's where they were made. I see, uh-huh.
That's where they practiced. Just for dangling.
I see.
But the prettiest dance I ever saw was in Lexington, with farm and week.
Went to the Farm Bureau week.
Farm and home.
That's been 25 or 30 years ago, wasn't it?
They'd have it a whole week. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I remember.
And they'd walk around with one finger. I thought the rivers runs on like that, and this thing sitting on that thing.
I see.
Round and round it goes.
Yes?
I'm sorry that went out. Those play parties were so full of fun.
It was an enjoyable thing. Well, what kind of clothes did the girls wear to those parties? Were y'all specially dressed up?
Not particularly. Just anything we were wearing.
Just your Sunday clothes, for instance? How did you, if you were going to a play party across the neighborhood, how did you go?
Well, we rode horseback with a right leg over the horn of the saddle. We didn't ride stride.
A lady wouldn't do that then, would she?
Yes, some of them would.
Oh, I see. But you rode on a side saddle?
One time, we visited some girls over in Tennessee. And the boy put his arm around my chair. And the old maid hollered, "Take your arm down there."
They were very careful, were they?
Yeah.
You want to tell us something about the church activities in those days?
Well, of course, we had the same pastor 50 years.
Now, you went to Oak Grove Baptist Church, didn't you?
Yeah.
That was about a mile from your home, wasn't it?
Yeah, just that.
And, of course, your old ancestors started the church in the first place.
In the first place, started at Donaldson Creek,
Yes.
but they always called it Dawson.
Uh-huh.
Never did sound that R.
Mm-hmm.
And they passed over all the rich land. As they walked through, passed through all the rich land in South Christian.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the rich land was.
When the pioneers first came down in this
Yeah.
area.
And the old station was back there.
Mm-hmm.
Greenbrier was on the Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
The Greenbrier is a wire rose,
Mm-hmm.
and every stem in it was green. And so one day I went out walking. My two youngest sisters went with me. They always went wherever I went, followed me. My oldest sister, Lily, believed in
My
work.
mother.
That's Louise's mother. She believed in work. She believed,
She always was industrious.
she believed in that just like any many scriptures.
And she believed in working for other people till her very
Yeah.
dying day.
Yeah. And of course, she didn't go with her. She never fooled her dad. When she was 14, she took the sewing for the family. You couldn't buy a thing, already made.
She made the dresses that you all had, and I've heard her tell about they went to town twice a year to buy all this material for her to sew up.
And Mother worked all 1 week, setting down how much lace she was to get, how many buttons she was to buy, and have it all there.
How many yards of everything you'd all
Yeah.
need for 6 months.
Yeah.
What'd you wear for underwear? Tell us about what kind of underwear you wore then.
Well, we wore corset covers over our corset, and I needed one that as a rat I read. But I always wore my corset.
You wouldn't have felt well dressed without it, would you?
No. I don't know. That's
Did you
not-
wear more underwear in the winter than in the summer, or did you wear the same year round,
Well,
approximately?
we wore those knit shirts in the winter, and then this corset coat.
Uh-huh.
And of course, in the summer we didn't wear but one.
When did you wear your shimmy? When did you wear that? I've heard of shimmies.
Well, just any time you wanted.
It was a year-round garment.
Yeah.
I see. Well, what was it? What about a balmoral? What was that? That's a word I've heard of.
That was a knit slip.
Extra warm one. Was it made out of wool or something?
It's woollen.
I see. Now the shimmy was just a lightweight cotton, was it?
Yeah.
And then the balmoral, is it balmoral? Or?
Yeah.
Balmoral.
M-O-R-A. I believe it's.
And that was a petticoat, more or less, but it was wool.
Sister Mary always wore one, but I think Lily made her slips
I see.
and mine.
Uh-huh.
We wore sateen.
Oh, maybe that's because you all were older and more privileged.
I don't know.
How about going back and telling us some more about the church and baptizings and Lord's Supper and things like that?
The preacher always took a stick, with him first time.
When he went out into the
See
water.
how deep it was.
Where did your baptizings mostly occur?
Huh?
Where did you mostly have the baptizings?
I always had them in a hole of blue water.
Down on Dawson Creek?
On Donaldson, right to the roadside.
Uh-huh. And go ahead now. He'd take the stick out there
Yeah.
to walk out. He used the stick to find out how deep it
I
was.
was baptized. There was 10 of us baptized, 9 girls and 1 boy. And that boy was Vernon Thomas.
Yes.
And all the others, there was 2 sisters. It was Alice and Lula Riggs and Sister Lily and I. And
Lucy and one of her sisters? Lucy Lawrence and one of her sisters?
no, I don't believe they were one of her sisters. I was trying to think.
Did anything interesting happen at the baptizing in addition to just baptizing people?
Haywood told us they had some fresh salad. And they were going to go that afternoon to come over there,
To their home?
stay all night. A mile and a half was just considered a walk.
Yes.
And so we went and stayed all night. And always the Thomas family when they had the preacher, they had prayer.
That was neat. That was impressive, I would say.
So, Sister knelt down just to be done.
Yes.
Tried knocked her over.
Accidentally, I hope. I guess it was accidental.
Supposed to be.
And what about the cider? Where'd that come in now?
Well, I asked Hayward. No, I think I asked him at that when was he going to serve?
I see.
And he said, well, as soon as we get there, I guess. And so they did serve it.
Did a lot of the neighborhood go over there, or just the young people?
Just
the young people went over.
Just the
Relatives, close friends. Do you remember about, was there any follow-up of that cider drinking, any result of that? Did the preacher ever know about it?
Well, he preached on it all Sunday morning.
He must have heard about it then.
He did. Heard me ask him. But 3 men standing around the organ and lead the singing.
Did you have an organ from the very beginning?
We had one I played when I was 12.
But can you remember before you had the organ?
Yes.
Well, how'd you do then?
My father, John Light, one did the singing. Always sat at the middle window, way back at the middle.
He didn't stand up front to do it?
No.
Uh-huh.
And how he managed, I don't know.
And now, how did they get their tune for the singing?
Well,
You didn't have any music, did you?
No, didn't have any notes at all.
Okay. How did you know how to sing?
Well, they had some verses put together, and the tune was named.
Uh-huh.
For instance, whatever, any tune had a name, and you just had to learn that tune.
Perhaps the tune was the name of the man who had made up that tune?
I don't know.
Perhaps.
See, it came from old books.
Did y'all have singing schools every now and then to learn how to sing all these various tunes? Do you remember anybody who came around and taught them, or any experiences that went with those singing schools? Or can you remember that?
Mr. Crute taught one.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Crute. One of them John Crute brother.
Uh-huh. Well, you want to tell us about, then you got the organ when you were about 12?
Well, we had a tuning fork.
Oh, to set the tune to begin with. And then you didn't get the organ till you were about 12?
I played it when I was 12.
Had it been there before?
No.
I see.
Not that I remember.
Well, tell us about that then.
Well, that tuning fork set the tune.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn that tune. And I Soldier the Cross, and one of them, an Amazing Grace, I believe it was, talked to the same tune.
Uh-huh. You didn't tell us about the Lord's Supper. You want to tell us anything about that, how it's different from today?
Well, they just used 2 glasses, one for the men, there's goblets.
Yes.
One for the men and one for the women. And everybody would take a little sip. See how little it would taste, you know. So that had to do the whole congregation.
Yes. You say the men and the women, did they all sit together or on separate sides of the church?
Women always sat on the right side, the 2 front doors, and they went in that door.
Went on the right door and sat on the right side.
And the men went in the left and sat on that side.
I see. So they didn't have to drink out of the same glass with the opposite sex then. And then what else did they serve along with the wine?
Well, they served crackers on the last.
Wonder where they got them.
But before that, they made this thin bread.
Some of the women of the neighborhood made the bread they served, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And they made it as thin as they could make it.
Uh-huh. Would it be in one big sheet and then everybody just break off a pinch, or would it be all cut up in pieces?
It'd just be in small sheets. You'd break you a piece off. That'd go a long way.
Uh-huh. Do you remember anything about who was in charge of taking care of that wine and bringing it there, having it ready to serve, or about the table up front where they put it on, or anything like that?
Yeah. some real pretty color was put over it. Fancy color. And Mr. Pete Light kept around, and they had the glasses, the judge got the leaking.
Wonder which end it leaked from.
I said, don't know.
And what you mean, the wine disappeared or something like that?
Yeah. Got up and told me. He always told me all the trouble he had. One day he went home and he says, I catch one of Starkey's girls talking today under the prayer.
Wonder which one that was.
It was me. But what was he doing but looking behind me?
You think he was looking at you or he wouldn't have known?
I don't know. These two boys, last he told me, they thought he could see.
Oh, the wine leaking out? You want to tell us about your red hair and the way you dressed because of your red hair and that red cloth?
Yeah, nobody ever wore anything red if they had the real red hair.
But they do today, don't they?
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell us about it. Tell us about yours.
Well, I see people use as red as my hair does.
Why, yes. They wear pink or bright red or any color. Tell us, did you want to wear red sometime?
Why, of course I did. And especially my everyday dresses. But I didn't get to wear. That's why I stole the red rag.
Well, tell us about stealing that red rag. Where did you steal it?
You don't know where those people live.
No, what people? Rutland?
Rutland.
Didn't they live where I live now?
Yeah.
Okay, y'all visited up there because you didn't live.
Log room out in the edge, and another one in the main yard.
And it was just about a half a mile from your childhood home, wasn't it? Okay, tell us about it.
And my mother never went anywhere after them. We always went in the morning. She could always,
Go spend the day?
Yeah. And so one day we went, and we didn't have much dinner. Miss Rutland she wasn't no grand cook. She said she couldn't cook and sew too.
And she had to sew, I guess.
And she had to sew. She was making us some dresses, I imagine. I don't remember what it called.
And where did you get the red cloth? Was she making a red garment?
Had a porch in front that had a bottom to it.
A floor there on the porch.
Right in front. And every time anything would wear out, she'd toss it back in there. And that's the reason I was picking it up.
And you just saw this red.
There's so much of it.
And you thought you'd enjoy having it for what? What were you going to do with it?
I was going to have a dog or something.
Oh, your dog could have a red vest if you couldn't.
Yeah.
Well, did you get caught up with on that deal?
Yeah, totally good.
Yes.
Well, when we started home, I had to take it with me.
Yes.
And of course, mother saw it.
And wondered where you got it and why.
I expect she knew all about where I got it. The little one-room school started, my father, John Knight, would always do the singing. They always had singing.
This school, but wonder how many children went to school, that one-room school.
I don't know, 85 was supposed to go, but they didn't do like you in Gertrude.
How was that?
They didn't judge them by what they did. It was by how many they had.
Oh.
They collected all they had in the district.
And they had 85 in the district.
Yeah.
That would have been a crowd if they had all been there every day, wouldn't it? It'd been hard on that teacher.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything else particular about those school days? What you happened while you were there?
Well,
Of course, you walked, I guess.
Wilson Thomas was always trying to kiss her. And we ran like scared turkeys. I don't expect you to kiss us for
You thought he really wanted to kiss you.
Yeah.
Well, do you know anything about what kind of pay the teachers had in those days? What kind of salary the teachers had?
Mighty poor.
That's what I figured.
And they didn't have to pay much more. I think about $2 a week.
Probably less than that.
It wasn't any more than that.
When I taught school in the 1930s, I just paid $2 a week for board. So I thought maybe they could get by cheaper than that.
Not too much of that, please. Only that my grandfather given like 40 acres of timbered land.
To whom now?
To these five. He had 5, so the Raymond says. He had 5 he gave.
You mean slaves?
Yeah.
After they were freed is when he gave them this land?
And a little wagon and 2 mules.
And didn't he also give each one a hog and a cow?
I guess he did, so they'd have some bread.
And each one had a cabin to live in, didn't it?
They had to build the cabin.
Oh, they did?
They had to cut that stuff down and take it every day also and build a cabin.
Now, he gave them that land up past the Armstrong land, didn't he?
Yeah. It came right up to, you don't remember Brian, Mary's barn?
Yes.
Came right up to that barn.
Yes, Somebody said he gave them this altogether the same amount he had given each one of his children. Do you know about that?
He gave every one that said a woman in the land.
I mean, the amount of land that he gave those slaves. Somebody says he gave them altogether the same amount of land he had given each one of his own children.
No, I didn't think that.
Some of the relatives think that's a fact. Do you want to...
And as soon as spring would come, they'd get a whole handle in on one they used for the walking stick. Both home on. They'd stop first at Aunt Mary's and make her a little busy.
Now, this was about 20 years after they'd been freed, wasn't it? Probably 25 years after they'd been freed. And they must have liked their master, or they wouldn't have been doing that, do you think?
They did, and the masters liked the slave, too.
And tell us more about those visits.
They came back and they stopped first at Aunt Mary's, and then at Uncle Frank's, then at Uncle Jim's, and then came on the last mile.
What'd they do while they visited you all?
They didn't come in the front door.
But what did they do while they were there? Just sit and talk, or did they look around?
That's the slave quarters. And I always went with them. I always had a lot of curiosity.
Yes.
And there's a well back there, their well. There's another well there. That made 5 wells.
Now, their cabins were back in the orchard, weren't they?
Yes, you remember where they would be while these plum trees?
Yes.
Well, that's right there.
Well, when I can first remember, there was the remains of at least one of those cabins back there.
Well, there was a brick and dirt chimney there.
And then there was that big cabin down below the yard that was called the wash house.
Yeah.
Did they ever go down there?
Yeah. That big cabin always took the place of what some woman today uses it.
A utility room, wasn't it? You were telling us about the slaves. Do you remember where they were buried? Where their burying ground was?
On the back of the grave.
In the corner of the family burying ground, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's been taken care of all these years, along with the family graves. Do you want to tell us about where they went to church?
Yes, they went to ones in Ogle neighborhood. Went to Ogle church, I reckon, up above. They didn't have many slaves down there. They didn't farm.
Where did they sit? Along with their masters?
I don't know that.
You know, I was thinking, we was talking about you going, you rode side saddle and went places horseback sometime. If you didn't go horseback, how did you go? Like when you went to town and places like that? Did y'all have a surrey?
Yes.
Did you call it a surrey?
Yes.
I thought you had some kind of a
We had
cattle.
a spring wagon first.
I see.
That was a Jersey.
I see.
And it was raised black stud.
And did it have a top on it? Top up over you?
One in the top on a Jersey.
Oh, I see.
Just 2 seats.
Did it take one horse or two to pull it?
Well, most people used 2 horses.
Uh-huh. Well, let's see. We mentioned something else we
See, the
mentioned.
roads were so bad. Roads were so bad.
Well, that's right. Were any of the roads around Oak Grove gravel then? All mud roads. I tell you something else we were talking about. You was telling us a lot about the clothes you all wore. You didn't tell us about the shoes and stockings, though. Tell us about those stockings.
My mother knitted all our stockings and then dyed them.
What did she knit about? Wool?
White, well, it was thread, you know.
Uh-huh.
Of course,
Uh-huh. Well, was it wool that she had carded?
I don't know. There weren't any of them made wool.
Oh, I see. But she knitted them nights after supper, didn't she?
Well, yes, that's about our life.
Uh-huh.
We always did that after supper. We never did.
Uh-huh. Do you remember anything special about your shoes?
Well, my shoes were calfskin. I wore every day.
Uh-huh.
Calfskin's about half as thick as real stuff, you know.
Real leather?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. It was soft, too, wasn't it?
And most people wore button shoes every day.
Oh, and that's why you had to have a button hook to button them with, wasn't it? I've seen those little button hooks. I've seen some real fancy ones. Did you all have a fancy one?
Not that I remember.
You want to tell us about the yard at your home? What grew in the yard? Didn't you all have a lot of flowers and plants in the yard?
There was a lot of shrubbery that had flowers.
You want to tell us about that?
Well, it had honeysuckle, and a red honeysuckle. Have you ever saw that now?
Yes, I have.
It goes up on a frame.
Uh-huh. We used to have some in our yard. Uh-huh. What else was growing in y'all's yard?
Well, we had, let me see what all we did have. As I said, and then we had lilacs.
Uh-huh.
Had lilacs.
Did you have snowballs and lilacs and things like
We had
that?
lilacs, snowballs, everything that was growing we had in the yard.
Did y'all have a catnip and things like that growing in the yard?
It didn't grow in the yard, it grew outside the yard.
But grew nearby?
Yeah.
Did you have sage and any other spices growing in or near the yard, or was that in the garden?
That's up in the upper end of the garden, we had sage.
When I can first remember...
And we had to keep it gathered
Uh-huh.
all the time, keep it growing.
When I...
Like a sausage.
Uh-huh.
We dried it and
Rubbed it out?
rubbed it out.
Did you have mint growing around there someplace?
Well, there was some peppermint, I remember.
When I can first remember, just a great big patch of mint grew by the roadside, just in front of the garden there.
Well, when I moved to the old brick house, there was right in front of right by the parlor windows.
Mm-hmm.
There's some blue flowering mint, but it wasn't peppermint. I don't know what, but it's spearmint, I reckon. I don't know what it was.
What's catnip?
Huh?
What's catnip?
Catnip has something, well, it's about like that.
Was it kind of an herb?
Yeah.
Didn't people use it for children, babies when they had the colic?
I think some people do.
I think a tea, maybe catnip tea, yes. I guess it serves some good purpose. Did you all have to do a lot of work to keep your yard pretty?
Our yard is never pretty.
Well, how did you take care of it? Just rake it every now and then, or what?
Pull weeds.
Oh, you didn't have mowers, of course, so you had to do it a different way. Did you use brush brooms or anything like that to sweep it with?
You used to have to call
Buckberry bush brooms? Uh-huh.
You know what that is, don't you?
Yes, I know what buck bushes are. Let's see. Did you tell there was something odd about the way the money was kept back in those days?
Well, it was all kept in the home.
I guess it's just too much trouble to go to a bank.
No, they just been leaving those. And besides, you had to pay so much more now.
Yes, that's right.
And okay. And he didn't cost him anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, did you say they kept their money close around home sometime, most of the time?
My daddy kept his right in the house.
Uh-huh. And never worried about it at all, I guess.
No.
That's simple.
But he never left it there if we went away.
Oh, I see.
I always said he was.
You didn't have any real special place to keep it in the house, did you?
Yeah. He had a place up over the front hall. I had a little place about that big and a slip box in it.
I see. You want to tell us about your wedding?
Well,
Tell us
I
about it.
don't know.
You remember how it was decorated?
That church, well, I'll tell that.
Okay, how the house was
My
decorated.
daddy went out that morning, and it was the 5th of December, but of course, at 5 o'clock it started.
Yes,
If it hadn't been over Saturday.
yes.
And the road was awful muddy. And he got some,
Evergreens of some kind?
he got 2 kinds. I was just trying to think.
Was it cedar?
No, we didn't use any cedar. We used this fern,
Oh, I see.
and something else. I was trying to think. Oh, it's holly.
Oh, I see, yes.
It's holly.
And decorated like for Christmas, uh-huh. Well, do you remember anything else particular about your wedding? Your dress or anything like that?
Bertie Thomas married first. They made her a frame up. She married Mr. Early.
Yes.
And we made a frame for her and got some kind of decoration. I sculpted little candles
Uh-huh.
and lights. But anyway, mine had holly and had there's real Boston ferns.
Uh-huh.
There's only Boston ferns I've ever seen in Trigg County.
Well,
All the others are green, sticks straight up.
mm-hmm. Well, you want to tell us about your dress?
Well, my dress was white, with woolen stuff, trimmed with silk lace.
Mm-hmm. Remember who made it?
Well, I reckon Sister Lily made it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I'm sure she did.
Uh-huh.
And I had a stash of ribbon.
Uh-huh. And where was your wedding supper?
It was at Mr. Sumner's.
I believe in those days they had wedding suppers rather than receptions following weddings. And it was over at,
No, I know what they called them. I'm just thinking. But they didn't call them receptions.
what did they call it, a wedding supper or wedding dinner or something?
No, I forgot what they called it.
But you went over to Grandpa Sumner's for it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Do you remember when woman suffrage was such an issue?
I was in Evansville in a hospital.
Well, tell us about it.
A big clinic. And I never did say another time I didn't want to vote. I never did. The women was all hurrying home to vote out of this clinic.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard so much of it, I really gave me the idea.
You just got tired of it.
And it made me think I ought to go vote if I was allowed to. But that's second place, three.
Oh, I see.
Women didn't.
Can you remember the first time you voted?
Yeah.
You don't remember who you voted for, do you?
The first time I voted, we just voted for somebody in the school.
I see.
And then after that, we had full suffrage.
You voted for the school superintendent in your first time? You don't remember who he was?
County school.
County.
Louise S was running. You know Miss S?
I remember that name. I never knew her. I remember that name.
She was running the county superintendent.
I see. When I can first remember, Mr. Levi Cunningham was the school
He was
superintendent.
that for a long time.
Let's see. You reckon you want to tell us about, we have this Thomas Bridges Association now that has a reunion every
Yes.
year. Do you remember that first Thomas Bridges reunion?
Yeah, I was on the program.
Tell us about it.
Well, it was down in the woods.
At Dawson Creek, wasn't it?
Yeah. And a barn was right close by. And so they put the water barrel right behind the speaker's platform. The 2 men and 2 women.
Uh-huh. And did they have a very long program that day?
There's good many people. They claimed that 10,000 people there. That was in the paper.
Wonder how everybody got there.
Some of them came by cars. Some of them, I know.
Didn't many come by cars, did
No.
they? Most of them came by what, buggies and wagons?
Buggies and wagons. They were standing around over.
Now let's see, what year was that?
It was 50 years before the next.
1922 then, wasn't it?
I guess it was.
Would have been. No, 21, because in 22 they had one at Oak Grove Church, which was the next year.
Yeah.
That was the second one out there then. And the Cadiz record at that time said there was more than, 2,000 there?
And that day at noon was Fred and Denham and Ezra came for my program.
I see.
And
And what was the subject you talked on? You were on the
I was
program.
giving them the honor.
The history of your Thomas ancestors.
Yeah.
What, you tell them about the trip here from North
Yeah.
Carolina or
I
what?
told them about them having one wagon, and
Uh-huh.
it was full of rocks. And
That's when they came here from North Carolina in
Yeah.
1806.
came up through Cumberland Gap.
That was in 1806, wasn't it?
I just think keeps house now.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
When they came here, James Thomas and his wife Molly Stanley and their 6 children, remember? And your great-grandfather was one of their children who was about 6 years old at that time. Starkey,
Yeah.
And you told all that in your talk, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did they have any singing that day?
I don't remember.
You don't remember that song that James Maston Thomas wrote about and had one phrase in it was, "Oh, James, so great, we love thy
No,
name."
I don't remember.
You didn't lead that song? Did you change your clothes during the day that day? Or did you wear the same outfit all day?
I was saying I feel old.
Well, somebody.
This editor came to get my suits,
Uh-huh.
and I said, well, I didn't know you was going to get it, and I tried to get it a little different. Says, we never had anything to do with your copy.
Uh-huh. And put in the Cadiz record?
Like never got it in. The Cunninghams had their reunion.
Your piece was in the record eventually, though,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Because
yeah.
Mama clipped it and kept it all those years, and I have that clipping now, I do believe.
It was just a eulogy.
Uh-huh. Now
And
then,
the other woman,
Emma Thomas, she was the other speaker that day. Yes, and say she told about her what now? Her education in Braille. Wonder where she went to school.
I don't know if they got.
The first Braille I ever saw was her Bible. Now, I was a very small child when I saw her Bible. Uh-huh. But I've wondered sometimes where she went to school.
I still don't know.
But
Of course, she told that day.
she did.
I know she did.
So that was part of the program that day then.
And then there was 2 men. One of them had taught in the same schoolhouse 25 years. And that was the oldest of the Bridges brothers.
Gent Bridges? He taught Maple Grove School a long time, I know.
Oh, he shot her up at Donaldson, didn't
May have. But he lived on Maple Grove, you know. But he did teach school somewhere a long
he?
time.
I think he up at Donaldson.
Uh-huh. So the reunions, they say that was the first Thomas Bridges reunion back then. Of course, then the next one was the next year.
Water barrels, all they had was for
That was a convenient place for it, wasn't it? So anyway, we've
and
come.
in the shade.
Yes.
but Lord bothered us. Yeah.
So we've come along, and we're still having Thomas Bridges reunion. Now this year, I believe you won a prize at the Thomas Bridges reunion, didn't you?
Yeah.
What was it?
Well, see, I'm kind of bumfuzzled now. This is that thing, the rich folks.
It was in the school cafeteria.
Yeah.
Now then, you won. The prize you won was the Thomas coat of arms, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And now then, why did you win that?
Because I was the oldest Thomas.
You are the oldest
I
Thomas
am
living,
the
aren't you?
oldest Thomas.
You're 92 years old, the oldest living Thomas.
Yeah.
And so that day you got the prize for being the oldest Thomas woman.
Thomas.
The oldest Thomas woman. Wasn't that right?
Uh-huh.
That's why you got your prize. And let's see, cousin Jimmy Thomas, your first cousin, got the prize for being the oldest Thomas man. But he's
80, wasn't he?
only 81 years old. He's a bit younger than you are. But Mama said that their family of children and you all were such good friends as you all grew up.
Well, you see how that was done.
Oh, yes, And then the Bridgeses were younger, I noticed, than the Thomases were.
They were last year.
So we laughed and said, must be the Thomases live longer than the Bridgeses do. Did you think about that?
Well,
The Thomases were very industrious people.
the Reverend told me the farm right in front of her door,
Yes.
and said to me, you'd stop and see your grandfather.
Yes. Well, I've understood the Thomases were very industrious, and most of them were farmers. They didn't seem to be interested in getting into politics or business too much.
We had a man have a meeting at Rocky Ridge once, and these Thomases grew up in the same neighborhood we did.
Yes.
And he had a way of going somewhere to spend the night, next morning getting up and going somewhere else to eat his breakfast. So he stayed in the sessions one night and come over to eat breakfast with me.
That was neat. He got to visit a lot of different places, wasn't he?
And he said they were stalwart men, all of them blue-eyed, and like kind of round hair.
Do you remember when William Henry Perry wrote his history of Trigg County in 1884, he said that old James Thomas was an excellent farmer, an outstanding citizen, and filled with the milk of human kindness. You remember that?
No, I read it.
Yes, that's what he wrote about.
Them were big chocolates.
Some of them, you think they're all rather quiet people?
Uncle Frank now wasn't, and Uncle Bruce wasn't. But they were the only two.
Would you say your father was rather quiet?
He was a man of few words.
I've understood he was a man of honor and expected honor of other people, too.
Yeah. He didn't visit many people, that's just Thomas.
Well, there were enough Thomases. He could still visit a lot, though, couldn't he? What about...
I don't think we need to put that in.
All right, we can just leave that out.
Remember, I tell you all, Mr. Bill Bridges, and nothing is nice. It just gets so.
Yeah. And so you all went there, and you all had to stay all night because it rained.
Yeah.
Wonder how many people that was.
Well, you all and all of us.
And all of Uncle Sal's family, that was a few people, wasn't it?
There's 3 full-size beds because we're all up into that. And I always remember having Betty did so much work. And she had to prepare pillowcases. She had a woman, she put on, says, I slept and dreamed that life was beauty. I waked and found that life was beauty, and she turned of it.
Oh, yeah. Was that what you had embroidered on one of her pillow shams?
Well,
did you call them shams?
Yeah.
And that's what you had embroidered on the pillow shams?
On the 2 rings.
Oh, well, that's a good idea, wasn't it? That's kind of true, too, sometimes, isn't it? After you were married and your father died, you all moved several miles away from your original home to a different neighborhood.
Just 12, but that's a long way.
Then it was. Tell us about it. Your church activities there in the neighborhood, and everybody was strangers to you, weren't they?
Everybody.
After having lived all your life among the kinfolks down there. Tell us about the strangers and so on.
Well, Mrs. John Yates was our closest neighbor.
What neighborhood was that you moved into?
Montgomery.
Okay, and
I was just a few miles from the church.
uh-huh.
They moved the church.
What was the name of that church?
Like it is.
Okay. And you went there to church?
And they couldn't change the name. They had to keep it
Uh-huh.
when they took it up there.
But they moved to several miles, actually, didn't they?
Well, more than
Oh, uh-huh.
see, they'd always had the part of the congregation went from one side of the ridge and part from the other.
I see. You want to tell us something about all the rest of your neighbors up there? Those people, you didn't meet those people till after you moved up there, did you?
No.
Well, tell us about them.
Well, Mr. and Miss Blair Alexander, and my closest neighbor, just across the field.
Yes.
And down the other way was Mr. and Mrs. Monty Red.
Yes.
And just about the time we moved, Jane and Malone went up there to teach school.
I see.
She,
There was a schoolhouse there by the church, wasn't it?
well, yes, there's one there, but this was a brand new school.
I see. Then when Gertrude grew up there, she went to school in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
You want to tell us something about her schooling?
Montgomery School.
Uh-huh.
And now they have a reunion every year.
Let's see, you all's home was near the railroad track up there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you have any interesting experiences connected with the train passing or the railroad?
Well, we had a lot of loafers up and down the road.
Yeah. What'd you call them, tramps or what?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And one old man told us one night from camping, that's just like it, told us that old man from camping always stayed in our barn and to throw him on an old coat down there. That he was harmless.
Yeah.
He wouldn't bother him.
Yeah. I thought perhaps living by the railroad track, maybe several interesting things happened in relation to that. You don't think of anything else particular besides that?
Not particularly.
Uh-huh.
Only every farm has its neighbors.
Uh-huh.
You get a girl, a white girl, and right around you somewhere. Come and work for a quarter till 1 o'clock.
To help you do the housework.
We do washing. And
Uh-huh. And then y'all lived out there till after Gertrude married? You all lived out in Montgomery till after Gertrude
Yeah.
married, didn't you? And then where'd you move from there then?
Well,
Was that when you moved to Cadiz?
I moved to Cadiz last.
Uh-huh. That was after Gertrude was married.
I didn't move in that old big house first.
You didn't? I thought you did. You bought another one, but you moved in the big old brick house, didn't you? Which looks like a historical marker. That's what it ought to be.
I was in here.
Uh-huh.
I wrote to the Courier Journal. They had a man there from the Courier Journal that tried to save old Yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And he said there's no such organization
Uh-huh.
in Trigg County.
No, we have been a little lax on history, haven't we?
Huh?
We have been a little slack in Trigg County on accumulating history, I guess. Well, Aunt Matt, we've had a real nice afternoon, and I appreciate all these things you've told us.
Well, I'm glad to know about the case.
Yes, it's an interesting thing to take a part in, don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.